Since the preliminary task, I've learnt a lot about Photoshop. For instance, tools like Liquify and Patch Tool, which made my model have more perfected figures. In development of my full product, I often checked back to my preliminary task to remind myself how I adjusted layers with shapes on my image. Once I understood Photoshop more and expanded the amount of tools I was using, I no longer used the preliminary task to help me. Instead I used research and planning, which justifies the clear difference of both tasks due to the amount of preparation I had. On the preliminary task, we had a couple of lessons understanding how to use Photoshop and undertook basic tutorials. This allowed me to experiment with brightening with models' eyes and using blemish tools, as I know it would help me with time management when I started my final pieces. It is now evident that in my final pieces, the editing I did is more effective. I was confident with Photoshop, which allowed me to take more of a creative approach. For instance, the photos I had taken for my contents page. The difference between my preliminary task and my full product is clearly significant through a change in a number of different elements due to more knowledge on both the common elements found within music magazines and how to use production software that contributed to my construction, such as Photoshop and InDesign. The difference between my school magazine and my final product is when taking photographs from my music magazine, I took a number of similar shots with variables to experiment and get the best quality photos. So here, this photo is more zoomed and has less space around it, but as her head is raised up, it made me experiment with the type of angles that would draw the reader in. And as she's looking at the reader, she does that. Whereas in this frame, she's in a black bath, which I used black paint in, so I could blend her into the background, which I've never really seen in a magazine before, and I thought it was quite a nice, unique selling point. The magazine really helped me understand house style. As you can see here, the colours of the background and all the fonts link with this, as you still get the light blue colours, and it really represents the school magazine and what we were targeting for. This sort of targeting really helped with my front cover and my house style that was shown throughout. So as you can see, this has brown tones because you'd normally see this in an indie genre. So in the contents, I didn't use brown, but I used this colour again, which is a creamy pink, and use black. But you still get, throughout the page, you get the red coming from the lipstick, and you get the sort of her image, but she's shown in a different light, which makes it more interesting because you don't want her to look the same throughout the magazine because it could get quite boring. You want to make the readers really connect with her, and I think I've shown this already just by looking at the contents and front cover pages. I think my school magazine product really helped me understand different aspects, which has resulted in my final piece that I am happy with and that I created to the best of my ability. Without doing this, I feel like I wouldn't have learned as much and been more courageous with how I've put posters, little magazines and live images. Without that, I don't think I would have been able to produce a magazine as creative as this one. I really think I managed my time, equipment and resources really well on the music magazine. This is probably because of the approach I had on the school magazine. I found it really easy to start taking photos for the school magazine because the facilities were already around me. Being a student, I found it easier to take nice shots and embed them into my contents page. However, it was definitely harder to take more photos that fit into an indie genre, but from my research and finding out how you can be very simple and yet it stays and remains effective was an approach that I finally understood after I finished my research and planning. Therefore, when going out and taking the photos and putting them on my front cover, it took me about 3 photo shoots before I found ones that I really were confident with and thought they worked successfully. And therefore, having good images, I think it allowed me to have a success in how the overlook of my magazine is, as I could go around with the text and there's not too much space, which I think is important from looking at other magazines like Q and Enemy. They are quite similar to mine. Whereas there has been some feedback about the one column, but then looking at Mojo, I think it's very different, and I just feel like having this and having Lorraine Stevenson stand out was really important to me. I think probably research helped me a lot more than this than compared to my school magazine because it is a different genre. But I could say that the contents page did influence me slightly because, as you can see, I did learn that maybe the font is a bit too small, and there is a lot of stuff on here which you probably would expect in a school magazine. But with my music magazine, the approach was to just add the most important stuff. That's why there's so many different numbers, like there's 24 there and 18 there, but that's just because it is how the way I've ordered it. So here you can see I used props like cooking facilities, but in my magazine I didn't use a prop for my front cover or contents. I actually used it in the double page spread because it was a creative decision of mine to reveal something about her that's more about performance there, because I really think from research and personal opinion that I didn't need a prop for the front cover, because I think her looking at the reader and having that personal identity was more important, because her eyes really stand out here, and I've done that with the makeup I've used and the editing. This is highly edited, if you probably wouldn't believe it, but I've edited her lips, hair and eyes, and this is all because of basic tutorials, and I just spent 2 hours editing a photo that I wanted to have this smooth front cover professional image. But I also started editing very, very before, like I've said previous. I've actually started to change her colour eyes here and smooth her skin with the patch tool. but there is, I think it has this school magazine brightness to it, but I think a weakness is, like, obviously this image is not a music genre magazine. This image wouldn't be used for a music magazine, whereas from editing more effectively, like making her lips bigger and red here, I think she really has that edgy look which you really want to get. And I've really found the importance of design drafting and how the final outcome related to the draft layout in this case. The flat plan for this was very successful because I did end up doing what I planned, but that's probably due to the writing set out and how the image actually displayed on Photoshop. So it was very easy to manage my time for this piece, and that's why, because of time management, I was able to add another element, which was the special edition covers. I actually got to make 3 little covers, which was very quick and easy because at that point I was very used to using the software. Whereas for this one, I didn't really stick to the flat pan because I think when I started using the software and getting used to it, I gained more confidence because I think with the flat plan I was just trying to do more simple stuff and didn't really want to use blending options, but as I brought it to life on Photoshop, I really found using like effects that allowed the text to have this burning sort of font really was successful. And now looking back and comparing to what I've done here and here, I think it was a success.